Welcome back to Walking New Paths, where we learn and journey with people forging their way through life with faith and courage. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the First Nations people on whose land we gather today. Here in Sydney, that is the Darug people of the Eora Nation. We acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging. We recognise this land was never ceded, and we partake in the ancient tradition of storytelling. We take a moment to pause and recall that wherever we are in the presence of each other. In this episode, we're talking to Jordy B about his story and his experience about what a path is to you. Jordy B is currently working as a teacher in Sydney. He's recently married, starting that new chapter in his life, and is an alumnus youth minister and youth ministry coordinator for ANZ PP&G. He's an exceptional DJ working professionally around Sydney. He's also running a very successful podcast called No Offense. Definitely check that out. He has a big heart for people and sharing stories, and all around is an open, honest, and genuinely good person. Jordy, welcome to the Walking New Paths series, and thanks so much for being a part of this. How you going?
Yeah, good. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Hit me in the feels a little bit there at the end. But thank you very much for having me. It's awesome to be here. I was a little bit disappointed that LYG obviously got cancelled, as most people would be, having been to a couple of LYGs myself, having run one. It was disappointing to hear that this one wasn't going ahead. I know how excited young people are to come to it, but also how much work goes into it. And I was looking forward to meeting a few young people and hearing some cool stories and being able to share a bit of my story. So I think this is a cool way that you guys have come up with that we can still touch some hearts in this Lasallian time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and thanks for that. I think we feel the same, that obviously it was a bit disappointing and out of our control, but I think this is a really good space, and this wouldn't be happening if that didn't happen. So
exactly. Everything in the last 2 years should teach us that there is no sure path. No matter how well you think things are going to go or how well you plan things out, anything can just jump in your road. And it's not about sitting and dwelling on what could have been. It's about adapting and adjusting and what can be, which is also a cool way to start this chat about pathways that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, definitely. And that is the whole sense of this space, is talking about those paths, especially with your experience. But before we dive into that, we are doing a thing called rapid fire questions, which is just a great way just to get a sense of who you are. There's some questions here, and obviously we've said a bit of your brief, but I'd love to hear your rapid fire answers to these rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
So, favorite song at the moment?
Favorite song at the moment. That's a real challenging one, straight up. When I DJ, I play house music, but when I actually listen to music, I don't actually listen to house music a lot. I listen to lots of like rap and lyricists and stuff like that.
Yeah, cool.
So in particular at the moment, a guy named NF, who's a wicked rapper out of America. He raps a lot about life and struggles and just cool things that are like everyday to normal people, which is really wicked. He just dropped a whole new mixtape. So anything on that's pretty much fire and what I'm on at the moment. But yeah, check it out. It's called Clouds, the mixtape.
Clouds by NF. I love it. I'm going to check it out myself. Okay, cool. Next rapid fire question. Macca's or KFC?
Macca's, for sure. Breakfast, lunch and dinner options. You get over chicken after a while.
Good man. I'm the same.
Although KFC has better nuggets, which is an unpopular opinion, but I'm all about that.
Yep. I disagree with you on that, but that's a conversation for another time. Cool. Next question. What's a TV show you just can't get sick of?
Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Great show. If you haven't seen it, you're missing out. You got to give it some time. It takes a little while to actually get into it. You have to watch probably half the first season before you start finding it really funny. But not only is it a great TV show, it's just witty humor. Like, it's not stupid humor, which lots of shows are going down that course. It's got a very How I Met Your Mother vibe, which is a show that I could always watch as well. And the number one all time is definitely The Simpsons. Like, I can watch The Simpsons
reruns
on Fox 8 and then watch the same episodes later on Fox 8 too in the same day.
Cool. Yep. I like those two as well. Very, very good. Next question. What are you grateful for right now?
Oh, so much. I just got married, as you said in the intro, and obviously so grateful for the fact that everything went to plan. The day went exactly as we wanted. Very grateful for my new wife, Megan. Give her a shout out. Grateful for family, grateful for friends, grateful for good health. Just grateful for all the little things in life that are going well, and even some of the struggles. It's important to be grateful in hard times because they're the things that you have to adapt to and learn from and become a better person. So, yeah, just trying to be grateful for everything, not anything too specific, but just everything in my life I'm happy with and grateful for.
Nice. Love that. I think that's a great attitude to bring into every day. That's cool. Two more to go. What title, this is a hard one, I reckon, what title would you give this chapter of your life?
Oh, that's a really good question. I might steal that. The chapter of my life. I guess I got to think back to what other chapters would have been. What if we said good times, great adventures?
Good times, great adventures. Love it. Chapter 7. It's good. Or chapter 27. Because that's how old you are, right?
27. I know. I was going to say something about realizing I'm old. This chapter could be called something like that. Like when I was back working youth ministry, I was 21 to 24. And it's crazy to think that
true.
that's 3 years ago now, which is insane. So life moves very, very quickly.
Yeah.
You just got to kind of hold on and keep up as best you can sometimes.
And I think that's a good segue into the last question with your previous role. Being Lasallian is, finish the sentence.
Something that you are. It's not a action. It's not a label. It's not a title. It's something internal within you that makes you different from other people. And that thing makes you want to help others, makes you want to touch the hearts of other people, makes you want to be a good person in general. But it's not one thing. It's different to everybody. And it's an internal thing that manifests itself externally in your actions and attitudes.
Clicks for that. That's awesome.
Thanks, mate.
That's so good. Well, thanks for that part of the rapid fire questions. It's so good to hear those different things that are going on for you and the stuff that you're into and passionate about.
Too easy. Thanks, mate.
Stepping into the series content as well of this main part of it. Earlier, we put the question to you to speak to what is a path at OIG. I guess in this podcast space, how would you define a path in the context of your life or even just generally?
Well, look, obviously when you think of a path, you think of the journey, something that you walk along and kind of stroll down, and you lay that out like your life. You can put it down on the timeline and show, okay, well, this is the path that I've taken. I think a really important aspect of paths is not when the path is straight. It's not about just walking and following the road. Paths have forks in them. Paths split and do loops and come back around. Paths have fallen trees in the way and roadblocks and turn back nows. And I think they're the important part of the paths. To use kind of an analogy, you could be skateboarding along that path and it's all cruisy and easy, and then someone throws a stick in the middle of your path and you hit that with your skateboard and you're going flying and you don't know where you're going to end up. Paths are sometimes laid out for us. Sometimes we lay our own path, which I think as you grow up more, you understand that looking back at the path that you've come from. It's really hard to see beyond a meter in front of you, no matter how well you think you've planned ahead for the future. You can't tell where your path's going to go. It can zigzag anytime. It can stop you anytime, but you can always look back at the path you've come from. And when you look back at that path, then you realize, wow, they're the boulders I jumped over. the sticks that I broke through, the corners that I chose to take, the routes that became my new path. Here is where I followed, and here is where I laid my own. So there is no one path for everybody. There is no end goal for a path. There is no end to the path. I guess what it is how you attack and address the things that happen along your path yourself, and the decisions that you make as you go, and the times where you want to change your own path.
Yeah, cool. I love that analogy that you put there around the skateboard, and you kind of go over a stick and you go flying, and you're not really sure where you'd end up. It just prompted for me to ask, how much of your path so far do you feel has been directly your strategic planning and choosing, and how much of it sort of surprised you as just random doors opened? Do you think there's been a balance, or is there an example? Yeah, I'm asking 5 questions in one, but
that's all right. I think
how's that gone?
The way I'm going to answer it is saying there's obviously specific parts in your life where you have to guide the path. For people listening to this podcast, knowing where they're at this stage, that's when you finish school, what are you going to do? The path doesn't fork, the path kind of ends, and you got to pick up where the path is going to continue. That's your decision.
Yeah.
I guess as you get older, or as I've gotten older in my own experience, I've become more content on where the path is going to take me. And that comes down to faith. One, saying that I'm going to end up where I need to be, regardless of if I want to be there. So depending on what age I've been has depended on how much initiative I've taken over my path. As I said, the older I get, the more I kind of let the options fall in front of me and then choose the path that I'm going to go down. So whereas in the day I had to create the path, now I kind of wait, see what the options are, and then pick my fork in the road. A story I love, and this is going to go off topic a little bit, but linking to this faith thing, is Jonah and the whale. For people that don't know a lot about kind of Bible history and context and exegesis and stuff like that, Jonah and the whale is actually what's called a satirical story. So it's kind of like a joke story. We don't teach specifically that Jonah was actually swallowed by a whale and spat out like Pinocchio. What the kind of point of the story is that Jonah didn't want to go where God wanted him to go. He was like, nah, I don't want to go there because I'm going to get in trouble. The people there don't like me. I've had enough of trying to preach these words and kind of getting shunned and all that sort of stuff. So Jonah gets on a boat and tries to go the opposite direction to where God wants him to go until there's a big storm. He falls overboard. He gets swallowed by the whale and he gets spat out where God wanted him to go. And the idea is that we don't have control all the time. We can make decisions, but the path is governed for us. And no matter what decisions you make, you're going to end up where you're supposed to end up. And once I realized that, probably in my mid-20s, life became a lot simpler in a sense of I didn't feel the weight on decisions as much. Obviously, I still have to consider and go, okay, what's best and this and that. But I know that no matter what decision I make now, I'm going to end up on the right path in the right spot where I'm supposed to be. So as you kind of find who you are and who you are as a person and what you believe in and what your faith is, and you surround yourself with good people, you realize that decisions are important, but you always end up in a good place if you've got the right kind of attitude about it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something I believe too. I think the sense that there's a bigger plan rolling out in front of us, but it does require us to make good decisions still and not just go, it's going to be right. Everything will be cool.
Exactly. You still need to weigh up and choose obviously what's best for you.
Totally.
But it's that reassurance in knowing that once you have done that and you have thought it through and you have made the right decision for yourself, or what you think is the right decision for yourself, it's going to be okay. Like it's all going to be all right as long as you think you're doing the right thing and you are following what your heart's telling you to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in your case, it's amazing. You're walking so many different paths, and you've walked so many different paths. You're ex-youth minister, ex-youth ministry coordinator. I said in your intro, you're running a podcast, pro DJ, teacher, married, new homeowner.
DJ.
It's true. There's a lot going on there. How are you navigating all these paths at the moment?
Sometimes it's easier than others. Sometimes you get a rude shock that you can't do everything. When I was younger, I decided that I was going to be a person that took up every opportunity that came my way. And I wouldn't really say no to things that were thrown in my path. I figured that if something came into my path, that I should give it a go. And that led me a long way in who I am as a person. I didn't plan on being a youth minister to begin with. I just volunteered because I was asked if I would like to volunteer. And I did. And then I was asked to be a youth minister, so I said yes. And then I hit a crux point in my life where I didn't know what I wanted to do, and a job opportunity came up to be a youth ministry coordinator. So I thought, okay, well, let's give that a go. And I may have had someone tapping me on the shoulder going, you should apply, you should try. And that led me on all kinds of different avenues and adventures. And then I've always been the kind of person that if I want to try something, I'm going to try it. And if it works out, I'll keep doing it. And if I get over it, I get over it. But I'll learn something new. I've played, I think, 18 different sports competitively in my life. And most of that's just because I'm like, okay, well, let's try tennis now and see how good I can be at that. Or let's go and play volleyball for a bit and see what I got there. I'm 27. At 26, I started playing ice hockey. And I'm loving it. So it's kind of just, I've taken on a lot, and there is always the point of, okay, where should I stop picking up new things? But what I've kind of ultimately decided is when I take on something new, if I appreciate it or if it's giving me more than something else that I'm doing, that other thing will fade away and I will do this new thing more. So, for example, I've picked up ice hockey and I've loved it. And then this year I've stopped playing soccer for the first time since I was 14 to continue playing ice hockey because at the moment that's where my heart is. I was doing a podcast and when I do the podcast, I don't DJ as much because I need to get the podcast done. So all kind of things have to balance. You can't do everything as much as I would love to, and I try to. It's about finding the things that are important to you at the time and sticking with that. And even if it's only important to you for a month or for 6 months or for 5 years, you don't know. When I started DJing at, I think I was 17, 18, I didn't think that I would be doing it for 10 years. I'm now 27 and I'm still doing it, but I love it. It brings me joy, so I'm not going to stop doing it. I'll make time for that, and I'm happy to miss other things to get that done. So it is a balancing act. There are many paths to follow, but I don't see it as multiple paths. I see it as my path. It's all in the one trail, the one journey of when you talk about Jordy, you talk about all these things because they're all in my path. And sometimes some things will be going really well and cruisy and something else won't be. Something will be falling apart, but we can catch that back up later. And often there's little side decisions that have to be made, but they all filter back into the main path and the main journey anyway. So it is a lot sometimes to juggle, but if there are things that you enjoy and that you love doing, juggle them. Find more time. There's always more time to be made, or you can always navigate things and plan better to get everything you want to get done.
Yeah, well said. And I think it's sometimes a balance of it being organically, it just fades away. And sometimes it's an intentional choice, and it's trusting your gut to know, okay, I need to give this other thing a bit more attention now. It's filling up more. And
100%.
That's a process. It's a process. But it sounds like you, just having known you for a few years now, you've had a really good balance of being able to juggle, but also knowing whether it's intentional or sometimes organically, when to push pause on something because something else needs more attention. And I think that's a great skill. It's a great skill, but it's also a way that you have, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's just about knowing yourself and doing the things that make you happy, and making sure you're making time for all those things that make you happy and not wasting time on things that aren't bringing you joy. It's very easy to bin things that you're holding on to for no reason.
Yeah. Yep.
And obviously there's external factors, especially for young people. You don't have full control over those decisions sometimes. You have parents and you have siblings and you have other people telling you what to do. But as you get older, you get more ownership over your own path, that you can then decide what track you want to follow.
Yeah. And that's the next thing I wanted to ask you was, what do you do when a path isn't panning out the way that you had hoped or thought it would? Do you have is it the obvious thing of, no, I just stopped doing it? Or do you have a strategy on how long to give it attention before you realize, hey, ice hockey is actually not for me? I have no hand-eye coordination.
I guess it depends. There's different aspects to life that you have to give different amounts of time to. Something like a hobby, if it doesn't bring you joy, I have no problem in just binning it straight away. Like if I try something and I don't like it, I'm not going to force it. I believe that if I do something and I like it, I'll keep doing it. Otherwise, just stop. Like that's the simple aspect. But there's other things in life that are important in the path that aren't that easy. Say, for example, friends. As you grow up, once again, thinking about the audience that we're talking to here, when you finish school, you'll realize that catching up with your friends and seeing your friends takes ownership. It's not as easy as you get dropped off at school at 8 o'clock in the morning, you see your friends all day, and then that's it. You have to then break off and start living separate lives. You're going to one uni, they're going to another, they're doing a trade, whatever it might be. You have to kind of work at those relationships. And one thing that's hard for me, being a person that loves people, is knowing when the path of a friendship has kind of reached its limit and is no longer valuable in your life anymore. And I use this analogy all the time. I stole it from a movie, but it's that a relationship is not a highway and a bike path. It's a two-way street. And so one of the challenges in my path, in my life, has been realizing when either a relationship isn't healthy anymore, it shouldn't continue, whether it's a friendship or whatever kind of relationship it is. The fact that I might be putting in more effort than the other person might be okay to an extent. But when it becomes an ongoing issue of, okay, well, what are we both getting out of this relationship? Then it's time to make a call on that. And that can work the other way too. Maybe being as busy as I am, I'm not giving enough time to somebody else that needs it. And so sometimes you don't get to make that call. Somebody else makes that call on your behalf. But that's a path that I think is a lot harder to navigate in our lives, because it's kind of where your path intertwines with somebody else's path.
Yeah.
And you have to work out, well, when is the right juncture to say, let's really work at this and keep it going, or it's time to split off into our own separate paths again.
Walk separately altogether, yeah. And it is. I think that's the intricacies of friendship and community. Community is messy.
Definitely.
But
it's not always smooth sailing.
No, but it's one of the most life-giving paths. And for me personally, I think the fact that we can be on a path alongside other people is sometimes what makes the path worth it. Even joining a sports team or whatever, or a hobby, a part of it is that usually there's someone else there and your paths come alongside each other for a little while, and then you can split off when that time's done. That's great.
And it's easy to take ownership of your own path. It's hard to take ownership of somebody else's. Like, there are people in your life where you have ownership of some of their path and their journey. I just got married, and so now I have two paths to think about, and so does my wife. And so we have to work with each other to make sure that both our paths are kind of in sync and heading in the right direction that we want them to, and supporting each other when someone's path is thrown a stick in the road and vice versa. So it's easy to kind of follow your own decisions and make decisions for yourself, but it becomes a challenge when those decisions have to impact other people, and you don't want to cross paths with the wrong people and all those kind of fun path analogies.
There'd be so many. That's great. I think that's great advice. And for everyone listening, I think it's a good point to reflect on whose path are you intersecting with at the moment? Are they bringing you life or not? And knowing when to prioritize and not prioritize another person's path that needs you, or no, actually I need to focus on myself right now. And that's the balancing act.
Definitely.
Jordy, this has been a wonderful conversation just to get your insight into and perspective on the path that you're on, but also the many different paths that you've walked and intersected with. I think you come with a lot of wisdom, clearly, with what you shared, and it's been really cool to hear about your advice and also your perspective and analogies that you've shared with what we've spoken about. I guess with that advice, and maybe leaning even into encouragement, is there one piece of encouragement that you want to give out to our listeners right now, the people that are tuned into this podcast?
I heard somewhere once, and it's one of my favorite things to reflect on and think about. This person said, never forget that there's always someone in the world who is worse off than you, but that's doing better than you are. And I think that always stuck with me, because it's a mindset of no matter what is happening in my life, I should always strive to do the best thing that I can and be the best person that I can be. And when we're talking about these paths, as I said at the start, it's easy when the path is easy, but they're not the important parts of life. The important parts of life are when the path is not easy, when the path is blocked, when we have to make decisions, when we have to build our own path to get around some sort of obstacle. And so don't sit down on the journey. Don't sit and sulk and wait for somebody else to fix it. Don't give up, or don't stay stagnant. Keep pushing forward, right? And do the best you can. Even if the solution you come to isn't perfect, just keep pushing forward. Okay, because you will end up where you're supposed to end up. It's hard now, but when you look back at the path, you'll appreciate the hard times, because you will then look at the shiny new path that you're on and think, I wouldn't have been able to build this if it hadn't been for that. So always remember that there's people struggling more than you are. Okay, keep perspective on your life. Always remember that there's people out there that struggle hard, but that can be doing better than you because they're putting the effort in. And so there's no excuse for why you can't put that effort into.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jordy. And I'm sure lots of people are going to take a lot away from that piece of advice on perspective. It's super important. And just want to say thank you for your time, your sharing, and just contributing so much to this space. It's been a real blessing to have you with us on this series, and it's been a blessing to know you just as a person and the different walks that you've and different paths that you've taken. It's funny looking back and remembering that you were someone that actually accompanied me back in the day when I was a youth minister, and that was an encouraging time and a part of my forming into where I am now. So thank you for that, and thank you for your ongoing yes in what you do for people and for the different paths you intersect with. I think it's great. And enjoy the rest of your week. I think it's, what even day is it? We're in lockdown in New South Wales, and it's Thursday. And yeah, stay safe in this current climate. But thanks so much for tuning in and for being a part of this and sharing your perspective and wisdom. It's really appreciated.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome to be back in this platform of Lasallian Youth Ministry. I never forget the years that I spent. They've helped me form into lots of the opinions and things that I've shared here today. And obviously I wouldn't be the person I am without all the people that walked with me on that journey. So huge shout out to all the Larsalian family out there. It is a massive part of your life, whether you like it or not, and it will make you the person that you are in the future. So thank you guys. Thank you, Damien. It's been awesome. And yeah, shout out to everybody out there.
Thanks, Jordy. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on our Walking New Paths series. We hope that you've been able to take something from it and are able to apply it to your own life. Until next time, thanks for joining us.